It's been over 10 years since the advent of the cloud. And take a moment to look around at the incredible heights that those of us in this room have scaled over the last decade. We've come from a world in which the cloud was primarily used by technology companies to a world in which the cloud is used by almost every enterprise across the globe. We've come from a world in which the cloud was primarily used for development and test to a world in which the cloud primarily has production workloads today. And we've come from a world in which the cloud was primarily used for infrastructure as a service, which is an incremental innovation on top of Type 1 hypervisors that VMware introduced to us back in the early 2000s. To a world in which the cloud is increasingly used for rich platform services, such as machine learning, functions as a service, and more. And we've come from a world in which the cloud was primarily something that most organizations had one or two clouds, typically some combination of VMware and Amazon, to a world in which many customers today have multiple public clouds, multiple hybrid clouds, and rich SaaS portfolios that number in the hundreds. And we've come from a world in which most of what has been running in the cloud 10 years ago was based on some variant of the client-server model with an operating system at its core. To a world in which increasingly we're seeing new applications built using microservices and functions. And then this one I know quite personally, which is we've come from a world in which venture investors wouldn't invest in the cloud, to a world in which most of their portfolios are stocked with both SaaS and cloud companies. It's easy to look at what we've accomplished over this last decade and assume that we must be standing at the summit of cloud computing. But we're not at the summit. In fact, we're at base camp of the cloud with 13,000 feet of vertical rock above us that we must scale to achieve the full promise of cloud computing. So what I'd like you to do today is to have you come with me and take a moment and look around at all that we've accomplished and all that VMware can bring to you and your organization as we stand here today at base camp, and to maybe take a glimpse into what the cloud would look like when we summit together. So strap on your crampons, grab your ice pick, and let's climb a little higher in the cloud today. The reasons for going to the cloud are really well understood today. It's about the agility and the innovation that we receive. We receive this benefit from a combination of consumption-based pricing, on-demand infrastructure, globally available data centers, third-party management, and rich platform services. But this agility and innovation comes at a cost. Well, it's often easy to deploy your first business service in the cloud. As you start to scale it, you start to hit some of the challenges that come with scaled usage in the cloud. In fact, I've had customers tell me that they found it harder to manage their business services in the cloud than they did in their traditional data centers. So why is this? Well, there's really three reasons. The first reason is the pace of change of the cloud, which is the cloud moves at 4 to 5 orders of magnitude faster than traditional technologies in your data center. That means that if you have an application in a data center that sees 4 to 5 changes per month, that same equivalent application running in the cloud might see 4,000 to 5,000 changes per month that might impact cost or security. And in fact, in many cases, you'll actually see, it will see 40 to 50,000 changes per month. This is a staggering growth in the pace of change that we must manage to be successful in scaling in the cloud. Now, of course, this is brought about by a fundamental shift in our relationship with infrastructure, which has resulted in new application architectures and new approaches to deploying, to operating, to managing workloads and business services. A second reason for the challenges of scaling in the cloud include the distributed management of the cloud. More so than any technology that I've seen over the last couple decades, the cloud has been adopted outside in. Instead of coming in through IT, the cloud most frequently gets adopted by a team, in a department, in a line of business, and then spreads outward from there. We have enterprise customers that have 5,000, 6,000 Amazon accounts. Why? They don't want 5,000, 6,000 Amazon accounts. It's because there's 5,000 to 6,000 places where the cloud was adopted. This decentralized management results in great risk. So I'm sure we've all seen in the front page of the Wall Street Journal some article about some exposure from a security perspective that occurred with a company in the cloud. And you step back and you think about that. It's not that these companies are inherently insecure. Many of them have really strong security practices. It's also not that these companies are finding that the cloud is inherently less secure. What's really happening is they're moving at cloud speed. They're moving at 4 to 5 orders of magnitude faster than they did before in a distributed management model. And so running at cloud speed can often result in great risks when you do it at scale. Now, a third reason for the challenge of scaling in the cloud is what I call the pervasive multi-cloud. If I talk to a CIO, say 3-4 years ago, typically the conversation when I asked what clouds they were using, they would come back and they would tell me they're using some combination of either VMware and or Amazon. Today, that same CIO will almost always tell me that they're using multiple public clouds, multiple hybrid clouds, and they have a never-ending list of SaaS products that they must manage. Substantial increase in complexity that the CIO faces every single day in the cloud. So in fact, these 3 challenges represent what I call the complexity curve, which I've been doing the cloud at scale since 2009. And every year, quarter, month, and week I have been in the cloud, it has been more complex than the previous year, quarter, month, and week. That complexity continues unabated. And we must manage it to be successful in the cloud. So how is it we can handle this complexity? The good news is that the path that we must all take to manage the complexity is well trodden before us. What you see here is what we call our maturity model. And you'll see there's 4 phases that we've learned in working with thousands of customers. They all go through as they start to mature and be successful in the cloud. These phases start with understanding cost and visibility and eventually move on to governance and security and move on to automation and then eventually achieve service integration. I've had the privilege to work with over 7,000 customers and sliding them right in this maturity curve. But before I did this, I actually did this as a solo climber myself back in 2010. At the time, I joined a small, fast-growing startup. And I was 3 months into the job, and I received a $350,000 bill from Amazon. Now, this was a surprise, because this is more than 4 times what my bill was the first month that I joined the company. In addition to that, in 2010, there weren't many companies in the world receiving a $350,000 bill per month from a cloud provider. And so I found myself on the left side of this chart, trying to understand, what am I running? Why am I running it? How much is it costing me? And how do I align it from a business perspective to make decisions every day that ensure that I am driving cost efficiency into my workloads and my applications? And so I did this, and I found waste, and I found opportunities to put in place reference architectures that built cost into them, and opportunities to purchase reservations and shut down unused infrastructure. And as I started to get cost and visibility under control, I very quickly started to realize I needed to confront the next challenge, the challenge of governance and security. I needed to push out to all of my teams and all of my key leaders the information that they needed to make decisions every day in the cloud. Information provided through dashboards and reports and alerts. And so I set about putting this in place. And through great labor, we were able to take our best practices and standards and start to notify our teams when they needed to drive a change that might impact cost, availability, performance, security, usage. And so as we started to get this under control, we also had to confront the challenge of security. In our business, there was nothing that worried me more about security. Given the API nature of the cloud, one small mistake in one team could result in a substantial exposure. And I was continuously finding myself looking into the changes made by teams and finding out that they made a change that could potentially expose our business to risk. So over time, as I got this under control, I moved on to the next phase of automation, which is very quickly, we continue to scale our usage in the cloud and found that we were increasingly overloading our leaders and our teams with the information that they needed every day to go drive change. And so we needed a better model. We needed a closed loop process that allowed us to actually build into all of our business decisions the automation to keep it in the optimum state. So as an example, in the previous phase, if I saw some unused, unattached storage, in the previous phase, I might just reach out and provide an email that notifies the user that they should shut it down. In the phase of automation, I would provide them that email and a date by which I was going to automatically shut it down. Closed loop process. And eventually, I arrived in the right side of this chart, service integration, where the cloud had been subsumed into every aspect of my business. It was in my KPIs, it was part of my service desk, my incident management, my entire back office was integrated into the cloud. And so at the beginning of this journey, I actually looked at that $350,000 bill and I looked at a KPI that was really important to my business, cost per document per month. And what I'd calculated was that I needed to spend no more than 84 cents per document per month to be profitable in our business in the cloud with the infrastructure that we were running. And what I found with that first bill was that we were running at $2.03. It was not only a cost overrun, but it was a substantial threat to the viability of our business. By the time we arrived at the right side of this model, we were down to 32 cents per document per month. That means we shifted from a model in which the cloud was a threat to our business to a model in which we were gaining a competitive advantage by leveraging cloud computing. And it was this experience more than any other that drove me to found a company called CloudHealth Technologies. And I set out with my personal mission to help other people like me slide right, to be successful in scaling in the cloud. And it was that mission that brought me last October through acquisition into the VMware family to bring our knowledge and our products and our technology to VMware's over 50,000 customers. So what I'd like to do today is rather than tell this from a personal VMware story, I'd like to introduce you to some fellow mountain climbers who've been long-term VMware customers. They also have been innovating in the cloud for several years. And each will take us through a different phase of their journey. One will take us through cost and visibility and show us security and governance. And another will bring us through automation and into service integration. In the process of the conversations that we'll have with these customers, we're going to demonstrate to you multiple products: CloudHealth, Wavefront, Secure State, vRealize Automation for Cloud, Bitnami. And it's one of the things that we don't always push out into the market very loudly is the fact that VMware is known as the dominant provider in the hybrid cloud. But VMware has over $10 billion of public cloud spend under management annually. In addition to that, VMware has the most comprehensive full lifecycle management through its suite of products of any company in the world. And so we'd like to demonstrate that to you today. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite on stage a fellow mountain climber who will tell us about cost, visibility, security, and governance. Please join me in welcoming Steve Lloyd, Vice President of Production Engineering for Zendesk.
Hi, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here today. Zendesk has had a cloud journey of its own, and we've made our way through a good way up that maturity model, and so I'm really happy to share that with you here today. My role at Zendesk, I've been able to lead quite a bit of that initiative, and we've gone along that road with CloudHealth and VMware along the way. So for those of you that don't know about Zendesk, we build customer service and engagement solutions that offer a rich set of data. They are open, they're flexible, They have mind share and engagement with customer experience innovators. We offer lower total cost of ownership, and we offer all of this and deliver it in a beautifully simple way. That's a big thing for us. The company itself is headquartered in San Francisco. We were founded in 2007. We have over 3,000 employees today. We have 145,000 customers across 160 countries and work with our product in 60 different languages. We operate at a massive scale as well. Over 1.4 billion customer interactions happen on the Zendesk platform each year. And each year, of course, that number continues to grow. Our customers are in a range of industries. They're in government, they're in manufacturing, other software companies like ourselves, and across really any industry that is out there. And we're committed to our customers as well as the communities that we're in. Each one of our employees easily each year delivers more than 6 hours of customer service within the communities that we operate. And we also donate a percentage of our revenue to worthy causes within our communities. So our cloud journey, it started in a little way, all the way back in 2011. And we started using, for example, storage on S3. And we used that for a number of years in delivering part of our product. But that was really just a small start to our overall cloud journey. The rest of the journey really began in earnest in 2015. That's where we set about to move out of our data centers and into the public cloud. We organized a specific program around this. We, in 2016 and 2017, took on a lot of planning, a lot of testing, and the main thing we did was we built a lot of tooling. And that tooling allowed us to accomplish the migration of every single one of our customers' accounts out of our data centers and into the public cloud with zero downtime. We didn't ask for any interruption for them to move out of the public cloud. In 2018, we ramped up those migrations, and they kept going faster and faster. Before you knew it, we were done. And then in 2019, we just finished, at the beginning of the year, finished up the last few. And today, we're 100% on the public cloud. So CloudHealth was a big part of that migration. And giving us the insight and overview of how our spend was going was a big part of how we achieved this over just a few years.
So, Steve, was there a point at which you realized that you had to put in place guardrails to manage the growth of usage across your teams?
Yeah, absolutely. And that point came really loud, like a locomotive to us. We had moved substantially onto the cloud. We had enabled, at that time, it was about 80 of our engineering teams around the world to be much more flexible, to innovate at their pace. And of course, they did that, and they built some great things. But they also built a lot of cloud technology. And just like your surprise in getting that bill, there were points in time where we got surprised as well. And so that's where using CloudHealth allowed us to provide some control over that spend.
So we'll demonstrate to you shortly the use of CloudHealth to actually drill in and do cost reporting. So you can see some examples here of looking across a dashboard across a multi-cloud environment and starting to better understand costs. When you decided to actually bring CloudHealth to your teams, am I right? You started with focusing on costs and how much they were spending and why their costs were spiking?
Correct. Yeah, a dashboard just like this is one that that I look at, and certainly my team looks at every day, and that gives us that overview of what our spend is made up of and how it's changing over time. And so that's a big kind of part of the answer. But the real power to us came by providing access to CloudHealth to everyone within our product organization and also within, for example, our finance partners. So every Scrum team that we have, every product manager, everyone in product and engineering can log in and basically get the transparency into utilization and spend within CloudHealth so that they can make the right choices. It's one thing for me to go have an idea and tell people about it, but it's a lot more powerful when they come up with that idea themselves, and that's what CloudHealth lets them do.
So one of the areas that you'll find in the cloud where you can really save money is through the use of what's called reservations. And several cloud providers such as Amazon and Azure provide this today. And if you're not familiar with reservations, it's effectively a price discount that you can receive with a cloud provider in return for making some kind of a commitment. Often that commitment involves making a upfront payment with that cloud provider. And in some cases, that commitment also comes with a capacity guarantee as well. Using reservations, customers can save enormous amounts of money. In fact, there's reservations across multiple different types of services, with the most common one being reserving a host or a virtual machine. You had a fairly sophisticated strategy around reservation management.
We do, yeah. There's quite a bit of sophistication, and also we have goals around how much we want to cover, how much savings we want to get out of it, and obviously we use CloudHealth to gain insight into a lot of that. And in everything that I talk about where we use CloudHealth, I absolutely use the word insight a lot because that's what we're getting out of it. And for reserved instances with AWS, that is certainly the case. We use it both for long-range planning in projecting out what our reserved instance expenditures will need to be to get new contracts over time. But then we also use it on a week-to-week basis to do things like reserved instance conversions and maybe to identify where there's a surprise in one environment or another and we need to take more tactical action.
What you're seeing on the screen right now is an example of a feature in CloudHealth called for reservation management. It allows you to actually create quotes to purchase reservations. And you can see an example here of a user has gone in here and they've set a budget of how much they want to spend on reservations. They've set constraints such as their purchase date, the applications or workloads that they want to target for reservations. And then they press a button and in return get the absolute optimum way that they can utilize that money to save them money. And a typical customer will see almost immediately a 40 to 50% decrease in costs for the workloads that they target. Is this a feature that you took advantage of?
Absolutely. We use this all the time and are directly from reserved instance management. We definitely are seeing that. We're right at that 40% level. Other discounts that come into play and everything, but for us, it's easy for us to see how we're saving 40% on our bill every month.
So you have costs and visibility under control. What was next in your journey?
Yeah, so really next was looking into things like governance and identifying how, as we move forward, we can enable teams in other ways, not just around cost, but how we can expand the insight that they get into other areas of managing their infrastructure.
So we usually find when we have customers move from cost and visibility and they get to this governance and security phase that it can sometimes feel daunting to them. And they're struggling with trying to figure out, well, how do I get all my best practices and standards put in place so that I'm proactively monitoring for them? Is there a first step that you'd recommend people take?
Yeah, so for us, it really was getting the basics in play across our environment so that we could get the most out of the tooling that we were using to gain additional insight. And really for that started with a very clear and comprehensive tagging policy so that for every instance that was created in EC2, every other object that was created in other services, we could line up what product that was a part of, what service it was a part of, what team managed it, and a number of other items so that when you then go into tools to get insight, for example, like CloudHealth, you're able to slice and dice and get the reporting that you want.
So we'll show an example here of a user creating a policy exactly like Steve just mentioned, which is the user can go in, can go set a policy. In this case, it's going to be a policy that's going to enforce the tag standards that have been put in place for the team and the organization. And if they find any virtual machine that's actually not adhering to this policy, to proactively notify the owner of that resource and let them go take corrective action. This is an example of one of thousands of policies that customers can and will implement over time. You can see here they're going in and at this point in time they're setting the type of policy. Tag policy is known as a configuration policy. They're choosing to set it for missing tags. And you'll also see they'll go in and they'll go set the action that they want to take. Some customers actually have hard enforcement of tags where they actually choose to shut down resources if their users don't properly adhere to the tag policy. In this case, this is a soft enforcement of notifying the owner of that resource and letting them take corrective action. Okay. So often security and governance go hand in hand. And what you'll see next is we're going to show you what we call our health check pulse. It's a very common report that gets used inside of CloudHealth. And this is a report that allows you to get a 360-degree view of all your optimization opportunities. So these can be things such as an opportunity to actually save money by shutting down unused infrastructure. It could be an opportunity to right-size or an opportunity to make a reservation purchase. But one of the other areas that you'll see in this health check pulse is actually security exposures. So you can see here a list of security exposures that have occurred across a team and need attention. So let's take a moment, and what we'll do is we'll segue and we'll look at these security exposures in a much more detailed way using another powerful product in our suite called VMware Secure State. So what you're seeing here is a dashboard in Secure State. And what this does is this provides you an at-a-glance view of your compliance to different standards such as NIST or PCI or GDPR or HIPAA. It allows you to look holistically across your infrastructure and understand where your teams and your organization need to pay attention for changes that you need to drive as you run at cloud speed. So, Steve, as an organization that transitioned from the data center into the cloud, how did your approach to security change?
Yeah, so we want to empower people with knowledge. And so, show the example of kind of some hard rules that you can put in and some automated reactions that the system can take. What we tend to do is to be able to provide that information. CloudHealth provides us the ability to do that, to inform our teams of where things are not the way that they're expected, where things are out of policy, or what needs to be cleaned up, the hygiene that needs to happen throughout an environment over the course of time. And so, we've used that across all of our teams, just like we have the cost information. So we provide them with this data, and then we rely on them to take the right steps. Now, at the same time, I should note that we also have a group that's kind of watching over all of that to make sure that we don't have any significant violations. But for the most part, our teams all want to do the right thing, just like I think all of us want to, and so we empower them with the information through the system. So
you're giving the power of the agility and innovation, but you're setting compliance rules and then monitoring for their adherence to it?
Correct, yeah, and we're able to to filter for different status and different events and slice and dice through the information to get the view that we want.
Yeah, and at the same time, it seems like you're keeping that safety net of having overall governance to be watching what these teams are doing, drilling into potential threats and exposures, and then making sure that the right corrective actions are taking place.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely have to have that part in place, and a lot of times that's a learning opportunity where we can reach out to a team and also have them, upskill their knowledge so that the next time, they're on top of it without needing to be reminded.
Okay, outstanding. So let's actually drill a little further into Secure State, and what you can see is this is an example of a user that Steve's mentioned within a team, and they're going and they're looking at issues across their infrastructure that they're responsible for, and they're able to filter these issues by severity, by rule, by service, and then they're able to actually drill in to specific issues to understand the threats and the affected resources and be able to take corrective action where needed. One of the great strengths of Secure State is that it presents what's called a violation chain, which is a set of connected conditions around a vulnerability. And this is particularly powerful because typically in the cloud, you can relatively easily identify primary vulnerabilities and threats, but finding downstream ones is often very, very challenging. In fact, they often go overlooked, and that more than anything is what ends up resulting in a front page article in the Wall Street Journal. So in this example, what we'll do is we'll actually go in and we'll go look at the connected objects in this team's infrastructure. And so you can see the ring you're looking at. In this case, this is an Amazon deployment, is a set of EC2 instances that are public facing. In fact, these are our web servers that are exposed to the internet. And that by itself, of course, is not a security risk, so you're not seeing any issues with that. But if you notice on the right side, you'll see a red violation has occurred. And that red violation is attached to another EC2 instance that is not public facing. In fact, that EC2 instance is internal facing, and the violation in this case is that that EC2 instance has an SSH key that has administrative access that SSH key is actually shared with all of the public facing web servers. A great example of something that by itself, this team might not realize that there's actually a threat to their infrastructure as a result of a downstream impact. So
this is a powerful set of functionality. I noticed a number of high critical items in there. I'm just glad it's not my environment.
It looks like I have a little work to do after
Okay.
we actually got to get out of here. So if you could go back and you could give advice to your 2015 self as you were starting on this journey, what would that advice be?
Yeah. Well, of course, it's always easy in hindsight. But I think if I was to have the opportunity to go back, I would certainly tell myself to be a lot more aggressive in how we move to the cloud. Because once we got to the point where we were shredding drives and sweeping the floors of our data centers, and we had all the flexibility that the cloud has brought us, we've just been able to innovate so much faster.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate
Absolutely.
you coming
Great
today.
to be here.
So funny story is Steve works a few blocks away from here, and his building had a fire today. So apparently all day, no one wanted to tell me that Steve might not show up today. So fortunately he did. So what we just did is Steve brought us through the first two phases, understanding cost and visibility, and then getting control over governance and security. And I can tell you, when you start small in the cloud, this may not seem like a substantial issue to you, but in order to successfully scale, you must get this under control. In the process of talking with Steve, we got a chance to see a demo of two different products, CloudHealth and Secure State. For those of you who don't know, you can see Cloud City just around the corner, and you can actually go see these products live there. In fact, actually at 15 minutes after this session ends, you can actually go and there'll be an interactive session that will occur with CloudHealth. It's a 30-minute session, and the first 20 people actually get sweatshirts. So I encourage you to go attend that. So what I'd like to do next is invite another climber on the mountain to the stage, another person who's a longtime VMware customer, also has been innovating in the cloud. And he will take us through his experiences in driving through automation and through service integration. So please welcome me and join me in welcoming Dan Deklich, who's the Chief Product Officer for 8x8.
Hello and welcome. Delighted to see you all. My name is Dan Deklich. I'm the Chief Products Officer at 8x8. I'm responsible for all product engineering, ops, support, probably a few other functions over there too. So today I'll tell you a little bit about our cloud journey, which has been possibly slightly different than most other companies. We have roughly 1,600 employees in 5 large locations around the world. We have been public for a long time. We have been growing pretty significantly in the last couple of years. When you look at 8x8, you will generally see around 1 million plus business users on the platform in 150 different countries around the world. We have been 8 times leaders in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for Unified Communications, and we operate an extremely complicated and distributed platform. We run in 15 data centers around the world. We run in AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, and we have just recently completed an acquisition of a company in Singapore, which with itself will bring a further expansion into Asia. So I'm likely going to end up also supporting Tencent Cloud and Ali Cloud. So this picture is not intended to scare you with the various 4- and 5-letter acronyms. It is just a very simple representation of what we actually do. Unified communications as a service, cloud contact centers, video communications as a service, and then we expose the full platform and all the applications through the APIs that are underlaying all of this. Now, one thing to mention, we have somewhere between 50,000 to 60,000 customers at this point in time. My one platform has to support all of them. I have customers that range from a small mom and pop shop in San Jose all the way to some of the largest multinational companies that have deployed us in 4,000 plus locations around the world. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about our microservices journey. We are now close to 1,000 microservices in various states of production. The number is growing like mad, and it will continue growing. We've been a VMware customer for many years. Everything in the data center is fully instrumented at top of the VMware platform. We love CloudHealth. We have saved a lot of money through CloudHealth, and we run Wavefront everywhere.
So I learned actually this last week that we demoed reservation management and showed how you can actually save money through reservations. Someone told me that you also take great advantage of that as well.
We love CloudHealth, and I don't know how I would function without it, honestly. To give you an idea, after deploying CloudHealth, we found enough instances that we could get into the reserved state where we saved something to the order of a little bit more than $1 million in the last 6 months, which is a stunning amount of money.
That's incredible. So in the previous demos, we showed examples of how you could actually set in place, govern your best practices and standards after an application is deployed. So what I'd like to do next is just demonstrate how you can actually put some of those standards in place before you deploy. And to do that, what we're going to go do is we're going to deploy OpenCart application into the cloud. And to do that, we're going to start by pulling an image from the Bitnami marketplace. And we're going to go into vRealize automation for cloud. And we're going to demonstrate how we can actually, in this case, we're going to open an existing blueprint. So just as a note, the OpenCart application actually contains two components, a front-end component as well as a back-end component. And you can see they're both defined here in the blueprint. And what we're going to do is we're going to go deploy this application with all of our standards built within our blueprint. And to do that, we're going to choose to actually deploy this across two clouds. So in this case, we're going to choose at time of deployment to put the front end into AWS and the back end into Azure. I'm sure someone's probably wondering why, since it's such a straightforward application. And to that, I can give you two answers. One is we can, and two is it makes for a cool demo. So we're just going to run with that. And you can see here that we now have hit deploy, and we have this application starting to spin up in AWS and Azure. And you'll actually see we'll flip between the two consoles, and we'll actually see the infrastructure being provisioned and being visible across those consoles.
So for me, I personally would not like to deploy an application across multiple clouds, split it across two clouds or more, but for us, we deploy microservices all over the world. We ended up, in order to make our life a bit easier and bring in some level of sanity and reduce the complexity, we built our own provisioning platform, which essentially makes all these microservices deployable all the way around the world.
Excellent. So just as a note, if you didn't know, Bitnami, like CloudHealth, has joined the VMware family in the last 12 months. And they have been operating at a really impressive scale. So they actually have over 180 application and components in their marketplace. In addition to that, they support over 1 million installs per month. And their installs comprise over 1.5 billion compute hours per year. So it's incredible scale that they're operating at. So let's actually switch back at this point in time, which is we've deployed the OpenCart application. Let's switch back to CloudHealth, which will automatically discover this application, pull in all of the information about these resources and all of the associated metadata, and will actually, in this case, show us costs. So I'm going to pull a Julia Childs here, and I'm going to pull out a pre-baked cake out of the oven. So what you're seeing here is 12 months of history for this application. And you can see that through most of the time I've been running this OpenCard application, its costs have been pretty uniform. But you'll notice a big spike occurring in the month of August. And so this spike correlates to the deployment of additional Azure VMs and EC2 instances on AWS. And when you see something like this, is your only real option just to purchase more reservations?
Well, when I see a chart like this down here on the monitor, I would probably curl up in a corner and gently go cry because I know CFO is going to come yell at me. But there are multiple things you need to do, and I think everybody does. You need to have a process which will catch spikes like this, hopefully before they become too dangerous. You need to use CloudHealth to make sure that you have a proper ratio of reserved instances to non-reserved. And then you have to use right sizing. Right sizing is an incredibly powerful tool in CloudHealth, which essentially allows you to say, is this really the size that it should be? For all of you who have managed engineers, I'm sure you know that there is no engineer out there who will ever resist the desire to spin up a 24XL on Amazon just to see what that is going to do for his build environment and staging environment. It's not something that you want to be on the receiving end when the CFO finds about it.
I've never heard of that happening, by the way. What we'll demonstrate, and I'll let it go in the background, which is we'll demonstrate how CloudHealth can actually help you with right sizing. But just for a moment, I'd like to just talk about right sizing, which is if you're familiar with right sizing inside your data center, right sizing the cloud is exactly the same, which is it's about rationalizing supply and demand. You can right size just about any service in the cloud. So you could be right sizing your AWS EC2 instances. You could be right sizing Google BigQuery. You could right size Azure DBs. So a typical, maybe the most common approach to right sizing is to actually leverage it for virtual machines or hosts. So a common scenario might be something like this, which is you have a virtual machine that you've configured with 8 virtual cores and a terabyte of storage. And in fact, you only need 4 virtual cores and a half a terabyte of storage to actually support that workload with all of its, with its existing SLA and with the right performance characteristics. And so this is something that in CloudHealth, we integrate with your metrics and monitoring solutions. We pull data such as CPU, memory, and disk, and network traffic into the product. We then model it to identify what the optimum resources are that you should provision, and then provide you that recommendation so that you can take corrective action. In this case, we can see that at least a portion of the spike that we saw in August is caused by the fact that we've actually quite simply just oversized this infrastructure. Now, in this case, we're actually stepping in to another great product in the VMware suite, which is a product called Wavefront, which is all the data you're seeing around CPU and memory and disk, et cetera, is actually coming from Wavefront.
Yes, so for those of you who don't know, Wavefront is a phenomenally awesome product, and I don't know how we lived before we actually got there. So let me tell you a story of 8x8 metrics and logging. What helps to mention is I came from Splunk. I ran engineering at Splunk before 8x8. So I joined 2.5 years ago. 8x8 at that point in time was happily underway to microservices. The monolithic applications have been already split. Release cycle has gone up. In the proper 8x8 fashion, we actually went and built our own monitoring solution based on top of open source. As you can imagine, very quickly you find yourself in a situation where you have more engineers maintaining your open source based monitoring solution than you have engineers actually monitoring your production services. So that obviously did not work. I then went around, I got the quotes from all the monitoring service providers out there. Some of them blew me out of the water with $10 million and similar numbers, so that didn't work with the before mentioned CFO also. So it was very clear to me that we needed a solution which is very simple to bring in, which I can bring in without much drama, which will then scale for all of 8x8 services, products, and infrastructure. So Wavefront is the only true enterprise scale observability and analytics platform in the metrics space. It is fascinating what you can do with it. So we ended up instrumenting all of microservices, all the VMs, all the containers, all the infrastructure that we could with Wavefront. We are now talking also about instrumenting the actual business processes with Wavefront. Think of it this way. If you are running support team, wouldn't it be lovely to see in real time what is actually going on in support, how your MPS is tracking, and how your CSAT is tracking? So Wavefront, to me, is the key, because they always seem to be a slightly little bit ahead of us where we are going on the infrastructure side. So we went with Kubernetes, and the reason for that was very simple, right? I run in all these clouds around the world. I need to have one platform underneath that allows me to push my microservices around the world. Wavefront did a really nifty integration with Kubernetes where the engineers can now get the multi-layered clickable dashboards. So you go, well, dashboards, what's so hard about it? But it's awesome. Because what they can now finally see is they can get the full holistic view across their Kubernetes environment, but they can also go into individual objects. They can slice and dice whatever they want. They can drill in. They can get all the information down to the lowest detail possible. So in other words, I don't need to have a massive DevOps team which is looking at the dashboards and then torturing engineers. I can have engineers take control of the production fully and totally. So we learned another lesson very quickly after going on the Kubernetes journey. People will push stuff into Kubernetes without telling you about it. So there is now a new feature in Wavefront. Wavefront put together a telegraph with the Wavefront collector in the same pack. You can now, at any point in time, see whenever something is pushed into your Kubernetes environment. Any new object that gets pushed will show up in this common global dashboard, and from there you can drill in and click and see what's going on. I've been now using Wavefront for 3 years roughly, and I have to tell you, it eliminates 2 of my major pet peeves. One of them is finger pointing. Nothing makes me more mad than when engineering, ops, QA, whoever is finger pointing at the other team. The other thing is wasting time on debugging, wasting time trying to figure out what is going on in production. With Wavefront, you get rid of both of these problems, and to me, that matters a lot.
Excellent. So you've been innovating in the cloud for a while. What's next for your journey in multi-cloud management?
For us, it is all about automation, and it's automation at scale across multiple clouds, across multiple data centers, across multiple languages, across multiple push production environments, and so on and so on.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So you'll see I accidentally left up here my, my email, and you'll see that an email notification was sitting on the screen waiting for me. And we clicked on it, and what we brought up is an example of a CloudHealth policy alert. In this case, this policy alert is letting me know that someone has just made unauthorized changes to the OpenCard application that we just deployed a short time ago. So at this point in time, if you step back and recap what we've done, we've had 2 customers come up and talk to us about their journey, taking us all the way from cost and visibility all the way through service integration, and specifically about their experiences and their challenges. We've also had an opportunity to show multiple products here. So Dan was able to show us an example of using Wavefront, of using CloudHealth, of using vRealize automation for cloud, and also leveraging Bitnami. So when you look at what we've accomplished as VMware and what we offer our customers today as we stand here at Basecamp, it's really quite a rich set of offerings. Offerings that really help you slide right and scale in the cloud. And we're committed to not just supporting our customers today, but also helping them get to tomorrow. And for us, our management vision is both simple and profound. We seek to take our customers from a world in which they rely exclusively on people and tools to a world in which they can rely on smart software that continuously optimizes for them based on their business goals. We seek to take our customers from a world in which they take great risks every day by running at cloud speed with distributed teams, to a world in which they can run at cloud speed with integrity and confidence. We seek to take our customers from a world in which they are dealing with the challenges of multiple disconnected environments, multiple public, multiple hybrid, and rich SaaS portfolios, to a world in which they can manage them from one suite of integrated products that give them the efficiency to scale with the cloud. And we seek to take our customers from a world in which they are struggling to keep up with the rapid pace of change occurring in all the teams across their organization, to a world in which they can actually drive their cloud center of governance using CloudHealth and all of the other products in our portfolio. In short, we seek to take our customers to the true summit of cloud computing, where they can realize the full value of this disruptive innovation. So we stand here at base camp, 13,000 feet vertical rock above us. I will confess that I get asked on a regular basis, as someone who's been doing this for more than a decade, what's required to be successful in the cloud? And I'll tell you, I've given the same answer consistently over a number of years. The answer is you need two things. First, you need superior products that are purpose-built for the cloud, that help you slide right in your maturity. And these are products such as CloudHealth, Wavefront, vRealize Automation for Cloud, and Bitnami in Secure State. But you need a second thing to be successful. You need a superior partner, a partner that not only knows what your challenges are today, but also what's required to allow you to mature and grow and scale in the cloud. You have both of these today inside VMware, and my commitment to all of you is that we won't rest until we take each and every one of you to the summit of cloud computing with us. Thank you.